Do you know that they killed 800 or 900 civilians in their assault?
Absolutely.
Yes.
That seems to me indisputable.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm
Yes,
glad that you're conceding something.
I've said that from day one.
Well, to be clear, you haven't. You did a debate. I don't remember the talk show, but you seem to imply that there was a lot of crossfire and that it might have been the IDF that had killed a lot of...
I said that there is no question, because the names were published in Haaretz, there is no question that roughly of the 1,200 people killed, 800 of them were civilians.
850.
850, fine. So I never said that, but then I said, no, we don't know exactly how they were killed, but 800 civilians killed, no, 850, no question there. And I also said on repeated occasions, there cannot be any doubt, in my opinion, as of now, with the available evidence, that Hamas was responsible for significant atrocities. And I made sure to include the plural.
There's a lot of tricky language being employed here. Do you think of the
There's
850?
nothing tricky. It's called attaching value to words and not talking like a motor mouth.
Okay.
I am very careful about qualifying because that's what language is about.
That's great. Then let me just ask a clarifying question. Do you firmly believe that the majority of the 850 civilians were killed by Hamas?
My view is, even if it were half, 400 is a huge number. By any reckoning, it's
okay. Wait, you didn't.
I said
wait,
even if because Professor Morris, I don't know. I agree with Mouin Rabbani. I'm not sure if he concedes the 400. I'll say
why 400?
Because I have
thought up the number 400.
Right, as I said,
of the 850
well,
slaughtered by Hamas.
If I may,
maybe a couple of individuals were killed in this very action.
I don't know.
You're saying from day one you believe this particular thing, and you clearly don't. You clearly don't believe this thing. You don't.
From day one,
You said people died. That's not controversial.
Wait, hold on. If I may.
That's not controversial.
Mr. Bonnell, I attach value to words.
Yes, you've said that. If you value them, you start repeating them so much.
Mr. Bonnell, please slow down the speech and attempt to listen. When I was explicitly asked by Piers Morgan, I said there can be no question that Hamas committed atrocities.
I've heard this,
on October 7th. If you want me to pin down a number, I can't do that.
I didn't ask you to pin down a number. You can listen to what I'm saying. No, my question is, I'll ask a very precise question.
To you because
Excuse
you're not.
It's a very easy question.
If I understood your question correctly.
My question is, do you think the majority of the people that were killed on October 7th, the civilians, were killed by Hamas, or are we subscribing to the idea that the IDF killed hundreds, 400 or 500 in the crossfire?
But let me explain why that's a difficult question to answer. The total number of civilians killed was 800, 850. Mm-hmm. We know that Hamas is responsible probably for the majority of those killings. We also know that there were killings by Islamic Jihad. We also know...
Well, we're bunching together the Islamic Jihad and the Hamas. That's
his
splitting hairs now.
Was specifically
no, but he means the raiders. He means the raiders.
I'm speaking in opposition to the conspiracy theory that people like... Do you prefer Norm or Professor Finkelstein, or what do you? I don't know how do you prefer?
Well, it's not a conspiracy theory.
Well, the conspiracy theory is the idea that the IDF killed the majority of them.
It's not a conspiracy theory.
And then there's also a theory that, as Norm pointed out on the show that he was on, that he thought that it was very strange that, given how reputable Israeli services are when it comes to sending ambulances, retrieving bodies, he thought it was very strange that number was continually being adjusted.
And do you know why?
When you say that in combination with, well, I'm not sure how many were killed.
Well, do you know why the number? Do you know why the number went down? The number went down because the Israeli authorities were in possession of 200 corpses that were burned to a crisp that they assumed were Israelis who had been killed on October 7th. They later determined that these were in fact Palestinian fighters. Now, how does a Palestinian fighter get burned to a crisp?
No, you're mixing two things. Some of the bodies they weren't able to identify, and eventually they ruled that some of them were actually Arab marauders rather than Israeli victims. A few of them also, of the Jews, were burnt to a crisp. And it took them time to work this out. And they came out initially with a slightly higher figure, 1,400 dead, and eventually reduced it to 1,200 dead Israelis.
And the reason is that a proportion of Israeli civilians killed on October 7th, I don't believe it was a majority. We don't know how many. Some were killed in crossfire. Some were killed by Israeli shell fire, helicopter fire, and so on. And the majority were killed by Palestinians. And of that majority, we don't know. I mean, again, I understood your question as referring specifically to Hamas, which is why I tried to answer it that way. But if you meant generically Palestinians, yes. If you mean specifically Hamas, we don't have a clear breakdown of how many.
No, I don't mean specifically Hamas. But I just think when you use the word some, that's doing a lot of heavy lifting.
Who use some?
That's fine, but some can mean anywhere from 1% to 49%.
But we don't know.
Some.